One of the things I emphasize to people taking the MCAT or preparing for the MCAT is to take practice exams. What was your approach with practice exams?
So I got the AMC practice tests, but I tried to push those off until closer to my exam date, so I would have those like as the last resort. I also did get some UWorld practice questions, which is a very valuable resource as well. And then I got tests from another third-party company. I think it was Altius. So I started with those. I would say if anyone uses third-party test prep material to take the scores you get with a grain of salt, because I would get a score back and it would not be what I was hoping to get. But I would have to like push my MCAT date a lot further out. But by the time I was taking the AMC tests, those were more reflective of the real test, and my scores were a lot better by that point on it.
One of the other pieces of advice that I like to give students who are preparing to take the MCAT is to really put a lot of their focus on practice questions. How much effort did you devote to practice questions, and did you find that helpful?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I have some friends from college that are in medical school now, and they told me the same thing, is to do a lot of practice questions because that really shows where the gaps in your knowledge might be. I think for me, it was important like the first month to actually just do more content review. I did start doing a lot of practice questions from the get-go, and I think personally I was just getting frustrated with how many I was getting wrong, and I kept like a checklist of all of the things that I got wrong, and I figured maybe it would just be better to read the books first and then come back to it. But I would say like I probably wouldn't recommend spending more than a month doing just content review, because like you said, the practice questions definitely show you what things you might be missing even though you think you understand them just from that content review.